My name is Frank Chi. I'm a filmmaker, and I directed the recent documentary on Jeremy Lin called 38 at the Garden, now airing on HBO and available on HBO Max.
While I'm watching this live, I'm like, this cannot be happening. This cannot be happening.
I think it just blew all of our minds that we would see someone that looked like my cousin dominate on an NBA court.
It's the most impossible thing I think I have ever witnessed in my life.
When most Americans think about Asians, they think about dry cleaners, they think about IT guy.
Small, passive, diminutive, unathletic.
The stereotyping, the derision are so rampant.
You don't think no Asian kid that's this size is gonna be dunking.
This is who I am. This is what I'm capable of. All you guys need to do is watch and see.
This kid came out of nowhere and started balling, like, for real.
It wasn't just Asian people talking about it. Everybody was talking about it.
The Lakers came in with the idea that we're gonna end this fairy tale, we're gonna end it tonight.
But Jeremy just kept making shots.
He gave all y'all what y'all wanted to see.
Is this the other plot of Space Jam? Like, whose superpowers did Jeremy Lin steal?
Yo, this dude scored 38 points! At the Garden, at the Mecca.
The biggest thing Linsanity brought was hope. It inspired people.
The last few years, Asian Americans have just gotten beaten down. And when I think back on Linsanity, I long to feel those moments of just pure joy and unity.
This moment, it broke the matrix for us.
Welcome to the 4th season of Factual America. We're brought to you by Alamo Pictures, an Austin and London-based production company, making documentaries about America for international audiences. I'm your host, Matthew Sherwood. Each week I watch a hit documentary and then talk with the filmmakers and their subjects. This week it is my pleasure to welcome Frank Chi, director of 38 at the Garden. The film chronicles the extraordinary ascendance of point guard Jeremy Lin during his landmark 2012 season with the New York Knicks. Lin, an undrafted Harvard graduate, shocked fans, stunned his teammates, and galvanized the Asian American community when he scored 38 points at Madison Square Garden against the Los Angeles Lakers, solidifying Lin's hot streak and the Linsanity craze. A decade later, Lin's stature as a groundbreaking cultural icon stands in stark relief to a recent spate of hate crimes against the Asian American community. Join us as we talk with Frank about 38 at the Garden, Jeremy Lin, and the importance of Linsanity 10 years later. Frank, welcome to Factual America. How are things with you?
Great. Thanks for having me, Matthew.
Yeah, it's great to have you on. As our listeners would have heard in the intro, we're talking with Frank Chi, the director and writer of 38 at the Garden. It's been released out on, you can find it on HBO and stream it on HBO Max. So, Frank, maybe to get us started, maybe you can tell us, what is 38 at the Garden all about? Maybe give us a synopsis.
So it's about the night Jeremy Lin scored 38 points against the Lakers at Madison Square Garden back in February of 2012. It's the 10-year anniversary, right?
All right.
But I think that night, it stands out to me personally as like one of the two like most magical nights of my life. I always put it this way. The movie is about an impossible moment, right? A moment when society at large assigns to a group of people saying, you can't do this. And then someone comes out of nowhere and just shatters that to pieces. And that's actually how the movie came about, the birth of the idea. In 2020, I was having this conversation with one of the producers of the movie, Travon, who won an Academy Award for Best Live Action Short in 2021 with Two Distant Strangers.
Yeah.
So we're just constantly talking movies, but we're talking culture. We're talking what are the moments that captivate us, and we were talking about it in the context of Obama, right? Because that is the biggest impossible moment any of us have ever lived through, right? So we were like, what other moments feel like that? And I was like, look, man, I'm Asian. So there's only one answer, right? And it's Linsanity. And the way I framed it to him was the two most magical nights of my life. The first night was when Barack Obama was elected president, and the second was when Jeremy dropped 38 at the Garden. That's why the movie is called 38 at the Garden.
Right.
I was living in Washington, D.C. at the time, and I took the train up to try to get into the game in New York. And the scalpers outside, I mean, they know how big of a game this is. They see I'm Asian, and they were trying to like, I think the cheapest ticket I could find was like $700 for like nosebleeds near the ceiling.
Oh
you know,
my
like Madison Square Garden, if you sit all the way up top, like you're basically touching the ceiling.
Right.
And I just was like, I can't afford that. I'm like in my mid 20s, and I was like, okay, well, what can I do? Koreatown's right next door to the Garden. So I just was like, all right, whatever. Like I'll go to Koreatown and I'll watch it at like a karaoke bar. And I popped myself down at one of the bars. And I mean, once we started this project working with Jeremy, I told Jeremy this. I was like, looking back on it, like I don't think I actually would have traded the experience I had for even being in the Garden. Because I was surrounded by people who look like me, who are maybe my age or a little bit older. And I mean, you've seen the movie by now, right? Like he lost his mind. He played out of his mind for 2 hours. So you had 2 hours of people just losing it in this bar.
Right.
They're screaming. They're like running around. They're like crying into their beer. I'm doing all those things too, but like I'm also an observer. So I'm like, you know, what's going on here? Like, is it the, I don't know, like, is it the cathartic reaction to a wall of stereotypes that all Asian people feel like we deal with? And like, you see this guy break these stereotypes and like, you know, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. Or is it like the fact that like all of our parents made us play piano and violin and not let us play basketball? So like we have like these broken dreams and we see this guy get to live it on the world stage.
Yeah.
Both? Like, is it both of these things? It was both for me. I could definitely tell you that. And I tell this story to Travon, and Travon's just like, are you serious? Like I've never heard Linsanity like that. He was like, you know, how is that not a movie? Like Linsanity from the Asian fans' perspective, how is that not a movie? And to be totally honest with you, like I think when he first said it to me, my first reaction was to doubt it, right? The first part of the movie is called doubt. It's like this thing that all Asian Americans deal with. It's like, nobody cares. Like I think the first thing I said to him was like, man, that was 8 years ago. Nobody cares what Asian people think in this country. We're invisible. That's literally like my first reaction to this idea, which actually, you know, was a great idea. But I thought about it for a couple of weeks and I was just like, look, we don't know Jeremy at this point. We know yet whether he'd be down for it or not, but we're like, if Jeremy is down and we tell this story, we relive this moment from the standpoint of the community, from the people that it meant the most to on the 10-year anniversary, when we're going to relive our favorite Asian American memory during what is the worst time to be Asian American in recent history. If we can talk, I mean, this is 2020, COVID, it's already like in the first phase. So like, you know, anti-Asian violence is already starting to creep up. So I was like, look, if we can actually make a movie about this moment and reliving this moment in the context of today, then it's totally worth it. And we got to make it happen no matter what. So I went back to Travon and I was like, look, man, I made a deck. Like, let's go. So right after that, we talked to our other producer for the movie, Samir Hernandez. Samir is a veteran sports person and like knows every athlete in America. It's crazy. And within like 1 degree of separation, we were on the phone with Jeremy.
Wow.
And Jeremy, look, you never, like, he's a symbol, but he's also a human being. You can't assume that like, I think once we love somebody who did something that we like just hold on to like that, we forget that they're human. Like they did something superhuman, so we forget that they're human. And I think my first couple conversations with him, I was just really struck by like how much during his career he was like, first of all, he was like, one, I'm not thinking about any of the societal impact I'm making. I'm just trying to not get cut from the team. I'm trying to make it.
Exactly.
Right. That was his first reaction to Linsanity. And then the second part of it was, as he had a 9-year NBA career, he was just like, man, like, you know, I didn't want to be defined by Linsanity. I didn't want to talk about it anymore. I needed to like, you know, write new chapters in my career. And I totally understood that, but it was good to hear that because that's the human being. That's not the symbol. Right. And then, you know, as we got, you know, more into the project and we were like, you know, like, let's not close the project up like on Jeremy. We want to close it on the community. We want to close it on the Asian American experience and make it as wide as possible. That's when we were all like, oh, wow. Like, you know, like this project really has to hit. It has has to find a way to really, like just resonate with people and captivate people. I think like if you're different in any capacity, if you feel like you have stereotypes that follow you around, no matter what your background,
right,
you're going to be able to relate to the movies, because that's what we focus on the most. Is like, if I was to describe it without any basketball reference whatsoever, I'd be like, part 1 is about stereotypes, part 2 is about what happens when someone shatters those stereotypes on the world stage, and then part 3 is about today, when those stereotypes have been weaponized, and when they're weaponized, they turn into anti-Asian violence.
Yeah,
like that's what the movie really is about, and that's why we made it.
Wow, that is amazing, and I must say I do take a little bit of I'm just glad I'm not the only one that when I started watching the film, I too was like, I didn't have, I knew about Linsanity. I remember, Obama's talking about it and things like that, right? But I didn't have an appreciation for how much of an impact this had on the Asian community.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it was obviously I'm a big basketball fan, so I'm aware of sort of some of those stereotypes, certainly. Yeah. But it was the underdog story, kind of thing. But not, and now 10 years later, like you say, looking back on this, I mean, maybe putting that into I mean, you've already done that very eloquently, but maybe take us back to sort of January, February 2012, because you said it's about that game against the Lakers, right. Kobe-led defending champs, right? I think.
Yeah. No, they were a year removed from. They won in 2010 or something.
Okay. Yeah. But it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're
right.
Yeah.
But they're competitors.
What was? I mean, we've been talking about Linsanity. Maybe for some of our listeners who don't know, what was Linsanity and what was it like? It was more than just this one night. It was. It was a few weeks.
It was like
several
a string.
weeks.
It was like about 2 weeks long. I think it was like maybe 10 games, where something like that. Where Jeremy was undrafted, right? Let me just describe it. And there's a lot of this is in the movie. Like, Jeremy was California Player of the Year, won the California State Championship in high school, got 0 recruitment offers. He then goes to Harvard. Harvard doesn't offer athletic scholarships, but he goes to Harvard because it's Division I. He was 3-time All Ivy League, averaged 18 points a game. He enters the NBA draft. He feels like he killed it. He feels like he aced the combine, which is the workout. Yeah. And the draft notes that come back are like, lacks confidence, passes the ball, which is like, if you watch him play, like that is the opposite of what he is. So he ends up going undrafted, and then he goes into the league because the Golden State Warriors at the time just got bought by a guy named Joe Lacob, who's the current owner now. He's the one that turned that team into like the championship team. Right. But Joe Lacob, his son used to play against Jeremy in high school basketball in California. So he knew how good Jeremy was, and he saw past the stereotypes. He saw that Jeremy was like, had this wall of stereotypes that was trying to crush him every single stage. And he gets to, so Joe Lacob is like, we're going to sign him. Like we did, and everybody on the management team is like, what are you doing? He's like, no, we're going to sign Joe. We're going to sign Jeremy. Yeah. That's how Jeremy broke into the league, is because there was one guy who was in this position of power.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, because I know where you're going. Obviously, I've seen the film and I know the story. I know where you're going with this. But even just take a slightly step back. I mean, is there ever been a California Player of the Year who didn't get a Division I scholarship except for Jeremy? I mean, I can't imagine.
I don't know for sure, but I think that's probably the only one, right?
And then he ends up, and he's literally playing because he's literally playing across the street from Stanford, right? So a Pac-10, Pac-12 school doesn't even pay attention. And then he goes to Harvard, which, that didn't help him, and that only played into more Asian stereotypes, didn't it?
Right. Well, it's funny, Stanford. We have a couple of Easter eggs in the movie, and one of the Easter eggs is the Stanford logo on the coffee mug.
I hadn't saw it
in that animated recruitment office. Because they were the ones they were just lying to Jeremy the entire time. Like, we're going to offer you a scholarship. We're going to offer you a scholarship, and they never did. Right. So, I mean, look, playing at Harvard worked, right?
Well, indeed, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he ends up not just playing. I mean, he plays Division I basketball, that's how I first heard. I mean, I'm from Connecticut, so like,
Right.
you know, UConn basketball is like religion. And
Right.
his junior year, he goes into UConn, who just went to the Final Four. He drops 30 on them and dunked.
And Calhoun is saying that he's like one of the best players he's ever seen, or something.
Oh, is that right? I don't even. I
think
remember that.
there's a quote from Calhoun saying, we've had number one teams come in and out of this gym over the years, and he could have played for any of them. You know.
Wow. I mean, sounds like Jim, right? Like that to me. That's how first time I ever saw him, and I was like, "Who is this? This is crazy." But I never thought I would hear from him again, right? And this is sort of like part of the whole. And you know, Hassan Minhaj in the movie talks about this too. It's like this set of low expectations that we have, and that's like sort of deeply embedded in ourselves, right? Because Hassan talks about it, how he first saw Jeremy play in high school. He was like, "Who's the Asian kid with spiky hair?" Oh, probably this is cool. This is cool. He's playing on an NBA court in high school, but you know, we'll probably never hear from him again. And then I see him play in college. I say the same thing. Like, who is that? Oh, I'll probably never hear from him again. Right? Like so it's not just society. Like it sort of it embeds those low expectations into you because it's trying to force you to like stay within your lane, right? And then he comes out of nowhere. You know, it's funny. Like I grew up a Knicks fan, but like, you know, like I'm a longtime dormant Knicks fan. I'm not always a Knicks fan, right? Yeah. So like to see this guy don a Knicks jersey, to score 38 points against Kobe Bryant and the Lakers.
Yeah, so that's the thing. I mean, exactly, because so he was with the. I mean, he, you know, not to bore people with the details of the NBA, but he's like in the D League. He's going in and out. He's being waived. He's not sticking with any team. And to be honest, the Knicks don't really. They just need bodies, right? And then
they have a ton of injuries.
Ton of injuries. D'Antoni's like, who's this? Probably saying, who the hell is this Asian kid they just got for me?
Yeah.
And doesn't want to play him. And then there's just, I mean. Something about
look, you know, D'Antoni did give him a chance, right? Like he did, exactly. Like he was like, okay, you know what, like Jeremy, get in there. And I think, look, all Asian people are looking for the opportunity to just check in the game. Like that's the best way I can put it, because if you walk around in America with an Asian face, you know what set of stereotypes follow you, like into a party, into a meeting. I mean, even down the street. You know what I mean? Like, you know. And you know that wall of stereotypes is trying to crush you. I think Jeremy's story it matters so much to us because he is the greatest example of somebody who saw that wall of stereotypes we all face. He found every crack in it, and he just kept on pushing and pushing and pushing until it came falling down. Yeah. Like we're all looking to do that. We're all looking for that moment where we get to check in the game and prove like our value, prove what we're good at, and that. It always resonated with me that way. And, you know, it's so funny. Like Jeremy's such a humble dude. And I come from politics. That's why I lived in DC. I made that comparison all the time to Obama. And he has always been like, you got to stop comparing me to Obama. I'm like, look, I'm not comparing you to the guy who won the presidency. I'm comparing you shattering a specific set of stereotypes for your background and doing it in front of everybody, which that comparison you can make. Yeah. And I think it's fair. Yeah. And that's why the story 10 years later, it still resonates with me to the point of wonder. Like, I can't believe it happened. Yeah. You know, I mean, almost the way I look at Obama's presidency, like, did that happen?
Well, I mean, I think it's a fair comparison because I have to say, I was asked in 2006 by an intern where I worked here in the UK, can Obama win the presidency? And I was like, look, no one named Barack Hussein Obama is ever going to be able to win the presidency. And, you know, and 2 years later, he does it. Right. So I think to break through whatever you want to call them, not even glass ceilings. I mean, you know, whatever they've done.
Moments.
These sort of things. I mean, I think that is a fair comparison. And I mean, can we overestimate then Lin's importance to the Asian community? And another thing I've picked up on, and maybe just my own sort of background, is that, you know, I think sometimes maybe we also try to divide the Asian community because I've thought of Lin as being Chinese American or Taiwanese American. But what was interesting was to have people like Hassan Minhaj and others come on and say Asian. They too, you know, someone with South Asian roots felt they felt this connection as well.
Well, like at the end of the day, like our interpretation of like Asian American identity is still so new in the United States. I think, the term Asian American comes from a group of activists in the Bay Area who were influenced by Black Power in the late 1960s. And they were predominantly Japanese and Chinese descent from, the Chinese Exclusion Act, the Gentlemen's Agreement of Japan, like the old school immigration waves that were cut off by U.S. administrations in the late 1800s. And then after the 1965 Immigration and Nationality Act, you get this wave of immigrants coming from all Asian countries, India, China, Philippines, Korea, right? Like you get this wave of new Asian immigrants, and they're called Asian American, which is this old school activist driven identity created in the late 60s. But they're so tied, and I'll put myself in this category. Like we're all tied to, like, we know what the old country is, right? And like the family, like the immigrant family is very much of that old country. So now we're like one generation, two generations removed from that immigration wave. We're trying to figure out what this identity means, and what is the power of it? What is the cohesion of it in American culture? And honestly, I think Linsanity was a great moment in that creation of this new identity, which to me is still exciting and still like in the framework of American identities is still new. And that to me is what's amazing about it, because it's not sort of set in stone what it means. I'll be honest with you. Like I talk to like people who are like around my parents' age, they will just never accept that, Indian American and Chinese American and Japanese American could be all in the same category. Right. But I accept it. All my friends accept it. Who knows what it feels like in 20 years, right? Like it's the same thing you ask Italian Americans from like the turn of the century, whether they will be identified as white, they'll be like, no way, right? But like, look at it 100 years ago from now, later. So America's a melting pot, and it's just constantly changing, and identities are changing and being reshaped and reformed, and who knows what it looks like. But I do think that I like that you brought that up, because Linsanity to me was a great sort of touch point for that identity, even coming to where it is now.
Okay. Well, I think that gives us a good point to give our listeners a early break, and we'll be right back with Frank Chi, the director and writer of 38 at the Garden, streaming on HBO Max and still playing on HBO as well. You're listening to Factual America. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Alamo Pictures to keep up to date with new releases or upcoming shows. Check out the show notes to learn more about the program, our guests, and the team behind the production. Now back to Factual America. Welcome back to Factual America. I'm here with Frank Chi, the director of 38 at the Garden. You can find it on HBO and HBO Max. So we've been talking about Jeremy Lin, and we'll probably talk a little bit more about him. But are there any other? I mean, so that was, it's not one and done. Are there any other Jeremy Lins out there? Not just in basketball, but I mean, what are the are we? Are there going to be Hollywood leading actors? Is that kind of, are these the things that you think about when you, as a Asian American filmmaker?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. I think they're all at different stages, right? Like I'm personally very interested in the mayor of Boston, Michelle Wu.
Right.
Boston's not a city with a lot of Asian Americans. Here is the Asian American female mayor of Boston. Like that's an incredible story already, right? But I'm curious to see how the future shakes out there. I think. For me, I'm always just constantly looking for places where there aren't that many of people who the wall hasn't been broken yet. And I think, actually in Hollywood, there are a lot of Asian American actors, right? And like all of them are, a lot of them are getting more and more roles these days, which is really exciting. But I would say like the original Jeremy Lin, if you're looking for Hollywood, is like Anime Wong from like the 1920s, right? So it's a different era. But like I'm looking at it in terms of like music, right? I love Audrey Nuna, who's very young, who's like in like the hip hop R&B scene. I love her, right? Like just like people who can captivate the attention of the whole country, and you know, by extension of like Western society. I think that's like a really important point to make. Like, I'm not necessarily, and we were talking earlier about Asian Americans. Like, what is like being Asian in Western society? For a lot of people who don't want Asian people in Western society, probably, but for a lot of people, like they don't see it as compatible, which is why people are like, you're just a perpetual foreigner. You know, you don't fit in Western society. You don't look the part. Like, I mean, Western society invented multiculturalism, which is what we're all dealing with here. There's beautiful parts of it, and then there's really ugly parts. So I think that is why I think Jeremy's story, I mean, we've gotten so much feedback and interest from people who are Asian Canadians, who are Asian Australians, right? Like, I mean, I think anywhere where, I mean, Asian Europeans, like anywhere where there is an Asian diaspora in Western society, like, one, Jeremy's story reached them 10 years ago, and now through this movie, you see it again. Like, that's a lot of our comments on IG. Like, where can I watch this in Australia? Where can I watch this? And, you know, like, we're seeing that because I think in any facet of Western society, if you've got an Asian face, you feel what the movie, I think, does a really good job of emoting, which is the idea of belonging. The idea of feeling like you're a part of the society that you were raised in, that you want to be a part of. And Jeremy is still the greatest example of somebody who just, he didn't ask to be a part of it. He took it. He took it, right? He took the shot, right? We talk about that Toronto, but he took the shot. Which is what, I mean, that's why the story, it resonates with Asian diaspora folks overall.
Yeah, no, it's, I do highly recommend people check it out because it's I love these films that kind of make, for someone like me who just hadn't thought of it in that way before. You know, I think it's and putting it in the context of what's been happening the last couple of years. I think that's you've done a great job. I mean,
thank you.
I mean, when you first approached Jeremy, was he reluctant to do this, or was he? You know,
I mean, I think I said it a little bit in the beginning, right? Like, he was like, I was just trying to survive in the league. And then I was trying to not be defined by Linsanity. Right. But look, Jeremy was also one of the first like major Asian American luminaries to speak out against anti-Asian violence. When it was first starting to happen in 2020. So like, we all know how much this issue matters to him. And when we started this project, like our main insistence was, look, we don't want people, Jeremy included, we don't want people to think about Jeremy at the end of this movie. And I think that actually is true. Like, we want people to think about themselves, right? You know, there was a young woman who came up to me after a screening recently. She like definitely was like probably in her mid-20s or something. And she was like, you know, I'm just thinking about every meeting I've ever been in. Because like when you feel you have those stereotypes following you around, they can crush you mentally, right? And I think the other thing too is like, this is the unintentional audience. We didn't realize we were making a movie for kids. Like, we thought we were making like a millennial nostalgia movie.
Exactly.
You know, and like, I'll be honest, like, if we thought we were making the kids movie, we probably wouldn't have so many F-bombs in the movie, right? But like, thank God it's HBO.
Well, you know, kids, it's nothing they haven't heard at home.
These days, right? It's not like how I was growing up, maybe you were growing up. But it has been remarkable to watch kids watch it. You know, we premiered this at Tribeca, and at one of the screenings, there was this young kid sitting close to the front, and you know, you've seen the movie. The movie is about anti-Asian violence. He's weeping. He's like no older than 10 years old. And look, I don't know what you were like when you were 10, but I was an idiot. Like, I didn't know anything.
I'm still an idiot, but anyway, yes.
But you know what I mean? Like there's no movie, unless maybe it was a horror movie, that could make me cry.
Right.
So I was like, what has this kid seen the last couple of years? Like, is he being sent to school by his parents telling him don't make a noise because they're going to call you China virus or Kung flu? Right? Like, you can't raise a kid like that. A kid needs to see possibility. They need to see their dreams being achievable. right? And Jeremy's story is still to me. And also, if you were 10 years old, even 15, you either weren't alive or were too young to remember Linsanity.
Right.
So to bring this back, to watch this person do this, it's a reminder to children that anything is possible, especially in a society where the stereotypes that you're dealing with are weaponized against you and could turn into violence at any moment. You need reminders that anything is possible. And that probably is the most rewarding experience for me, making this and watching people watch it, because you see the wonder in children's eyes. These tweets we're getting since the movie came out. I mean, like we saw a tweet yesterday. It was like, watched it with my 9-year-old kid, and he said the movie made him feel powerful. Like,
wow.
As a filmmaker, I don't think there's more I can ask for than to have that kind of impact of a story that we tell. And if people are having that reaction, I mean, we're grateful and we're blessed.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, speaking of reaction, I mean, what about some of these players that you approached to be, Lin? I mean, how were they? Because that was interesting too. I mean, what they say as well. They're very frank about how they saw Jeremy at first, and how they themselves, I think, have been transformed by this.
The movie wouldn't be the movie it is without them being that open and honest about it, right? I mean, I think that's one of my favorite parts of the whole movie is how they talk about it, because they're talking about it in real time. They're like, I didn't really think of anything. Like this little Asian kid, like, like why is he here, right? Like you're gonna put him in the game, like that?
Or he's coming to get my autograph or something,
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
The way they finish that story back and forth, like it's just amazing, because like. You see the challenges that he was up against. Yeah. So I think, having and like a lot of this too is like, this is the power of doing it 10 years later. Yeah. When you have some time to think about, when we're in a very different era, like 2012, 2013. It's like those are the last years of like the Obama multicultural era of good feelings, and we all know what happened after. And we're having this conversation now in the world that we're living in now. Whereas when Linsanity happened, it was still in this magical, good feeling era that, at least for me, it felt like, oh, this is America. Oh, we've achieved this multicultural, multi-ethnic democracy that we always call ourselves. Oh, here it is. Especially after Obama was reelected, right? That was the context, and we were having that Linsanity conversation, how everybody was having that conversation. And I think now, in the era of anti-Asian violence, in the era of just more like hatred and more outright hatred, to revisit it now is just, I think, a lot more powerful than it used to be.
Yeah. And so, I mean, how did you get, I mean, you were saying, you've already told us about how you were talking to Travon Free about all this and getting it. I mean, how did you two meet up and you get, and is he the one that really helped push this project forward?
Yeah, look, I think, especially when it comes to Asian American, I mean, I've been doing like storytelling in different, capacities, whether it's film or art, for my whole career, and I love it. But most of my projects are not about Asian American identity. Right. Not that I don't want to do those projects, but those projects don't get funded.
Yeah.
And so you're sort of just like, I mean, like, I'll put it this way. If you're an Asian American storyteller, you're told two things in direct opposite of each other your whole life, which is, the first is, as a storyteller, tell your personal story, because the personal is most powerful. Right. Like, American society is telling you your story doesn't matter, so who cares? So what do you do? Right. Yeah. So a lot of people choose. And I mean, as a storyteller, I was like, I'll just do stories about other folks. Yeah. I'm really good at it. I'll stay behind the scenes on it. It takes somebody to like push you to like, especially if you're Asian American, it takes somebody to be like, see the vision, go for it, visualize it. Right. And that's very much what Travon was like in this process. He visualized Two Distant Strangers, and he has an Oscar. I mean, talk about somebody who visualizes something and like plans for it, right? And to have him as like the support system, along with Samir. I mean, Samir's like the person who like knew all the right people to make. I mean, like, you have to have two very different producers and then have a director that all work very symbiotically, in a way that's like ultimately very cohesive in order to make a project go and make it special. And I think everybody played that role very well in this project, but it was very much like, you see your friends visualize success and you start to believe, right? And like Travon's like, I mean, he's not like that just to me. He's like that to like everybody in his life. Right. He's like the person that like he make you visualize what it could be, and then figure out a plan to get there. So I'm eternally grateful for the way that he pushed me on this project. Wow. And now we all get to experience it the way that I think we all wanted to.
Yeah, and exactly. And as you were just pointing out, I mean, maybe give a little shout out to HBO, because I'm sure
HBO.
Did you have problems? Did you pitch it to anyone else and just got nowhere with it?
I mean, in the initial stages when it was a concept, we pitched it to a couple of places that we thought were like very, very good possibility of saying yes. They didn't say yes. Then we basically were like, okay, we'll just raise the money ourselves. Right. And we did. And we raised enough money for us to do all the interviews and put together a string out. And that's when the conversation with HBO began. Travon he still is working on a documentary project with HBO Sports. And one of the producers on that project, they were just having a conversation, and he mentioned 38 at the Garden, and Bentley Wiener, who's the producer at HBO, was like, I've been chasing this story for 10 years. I want to see this cut right now. Right. And when we sent them to cut, it was immediate. They were like, don't shop this around. And I cannot explain how incredible this process has been. I'm not just saying that. It's not just lip service, because the movie is 38 minutes long. We made it a short because we don't want anybody to have excuse not to watch it. It's not an 8-part miniseries. It's not even 2 hours. It's 38 minutes. Anybody has 38 minutes. So you should tune in, right? Like, they saw that vision, right? Yeah. They let us tell it exactly the way that we wanted to, which is to have a larger message about this moment and this identity right now. And then they put the marketing dollars behind it. And now it's everywhere, right? Like, how could you ask for more from a place that I think a lot of people are just terrified of these studios, I think a lot of creatives think like the studios are there to kill their idea, right? And like maybe a lot of them are, right? Yeah. I mean, I'm like, let's keep it real. Like, it's not based on nothing. But for our project in this moment, I mean, HBO has been just unbelievable to us. And I'm not just saying that.
Well, that's awesome. They definitely deserve credit.
For sure.
I mean, I think we're coming up on, we're actually about to come up on, I think, roughly about 38 minutes. So maybe we should keep it like your film. But, the podcast is longer than the film. But I've really enjoyed this. I mean, what's next for you? Because you've had a varied background, I take it. Yeah. And is it true? I get on IMDb, and you never know with these things. Were you an RGB?
I was an RBG, yeah.
I mean, RBG, yeah. I mean, yeah.
RBG, So me and my friends, like, we were part of the meme. It was the meme that never stopped. It was like went on for like 7 years. Yeah. But that, I mean, look at RBG is like a really good example of a project that I love, which is like, I come from politics, so it was like political marketing, right? How do we make things go viral? I love projects like that. I will keep on doing projects like that. But I think my main conduit of expression will be film. Okay. And it will be projects like this. Like, I think for me, I'm really good at strolling down memory lane. If this movie wasn't a good example of it, I love to wax nostalgic and making people relive a moment that they felt was magical. So I'm always chasing projects like that. Like, doesn't have to be Asian American, but it just has to be something that matters to society at large in a way that captivates people. So yeah, those will be what my future projects feel like, whether they are on screen or on your phone or on your wall.
Okay. And do you have anything specific yet? Or are you just basking in the? You can't say. No one can ever say. Nor should you have to, because my goodness, you should bask in the glory that is 38 at the Garden. So, hey, thanks again for coming on. Really appreciate it. And just to remind our listeners, we've been talking with Frank Chi, the director and writer of 38 at the Garden. It's showing on HBO and streaming on HBO Max. Do check it out. And finally, a big thanks to our listeners. As always, we love to hear from you, so please keep sending us feedback and episode ideas. You can reach out to us on YouTube, social media, or directly by going to our website, www.factualamerica.com, and clicking on the Get in Touch link. And as always, please remember to like us and share us with your friends and family, wherever you happen to listen or watch podcasts. This is Factual America, signing off.
You've been listening to Factual America. This podcast is produced by Alamo Pictures, specializing in documentaries, television, and shorts about the USA for international audiences. Head on down to the show notes for more information about today's episode, our guests, and the team behind the podcast. Subscribe to our mailing list or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Alamo Pictures. Be the first to hear about new productions, festivals showing our films, and to connect with our team. Our homepage is alamopictures.co.uk.